Hey guys, in today's video we're going to talk about the basics in League of Legends. We're going to go over stuff for everyone who's new, so this is basically just a video on any new players trying to learn how to play League of Legends. Okay, first off we're going to talk about the rules to play in League of Legends. I'm going to go left to right here. So first up we got top, jungle, mid, support, and ADC. So now we're going to go over the map. The map is also, your mini map in the bottom right corner. This will show you all the lanes. I've already have it all written out here, and turrets and other cool things. So you got top lane, mid lane, bot lane, right? So top lane is where the top laner goes. Mid lane is where the mid laner goes. Bot lane is where the support and ADC go. That's a dual lane. And last but not least, jungle, guessed it, goes into the jungle. Now in this game you spawn either red or blue side. So you will be spawning at the red nexus or the blue nexus. So the bottom top of the map or the top part of the map. It doesn't change a lot to the game where you spawn blue or red side until really higher levels of play. Even then it's very minuscule. The map is basically mirrored. Also you have 3 inhibitors. Each team gets 3 inhibitors. They're little cool things. So now that you know about the map and the placements of lanes, let's go over roles and how you're going to play the roles. Now I'm going to go over every role and explain to you guys how they all work in the game to figure out which role you want to play. So let's go over top lane first. In the top lane it's a 1v1 lane against you and another top laner. So in top lane, your role for the team is usually a tank or a bruiser. There's exceptions for playing other champions, but majority of games you should be playing a tank or a bruiser. And I will put some people up on the screen here to show you what the tanks and bruisers are in this game. Just a couple of them that I like. So here are some tanks. We got Malphite, Auron, and Sion. So here are some brilliant fighters. We got Aatrox, Sett, and then Mordekaiser. Also, all the champions I mentioned are quite easily beginner friendly. The only exception would be Aatrox. He's definitely way harder to play than the rest, but he is one of the coolest champions in League of Legends, hands down. So as I said previously, in this role your job is either to tank or brawl, and I will explain what both of those are. A tank is quite literally how you would picture a tank, a very durable person. You don't do a lot of damage, but you take a lot of damage, and you really stand in front of enemies, and you just are really annoying. A bruiser, on the other hand, your job is you do tank a decent amount of damage, but you also do damage back. So, both have their advantages and disadvantages. Okay, now let's cut over to the mid lane. The mid lane is where we're going to find one of the spicier lanes, is where you're going to find a massive amount of mix-up in the mid lane. Unlike top lane, it's normally just bruisers and tanks, and mid lane is a bit of everything. So you have a assassin and then an AP assassin. The difference between the two is a normal assassin does physical damage and then the AP assassin does magical damage. We'll get into later what those damage types are, but just so you can kind of understand the difference just for now. And sometimes you'll get Yasuo or Yone in the mid lane. These guys are technically fighters, not assassins. Yone is more of an assassin, Yasuo is more of a fighter. But you will see them in mid lane often. And last but not least, a burst mage. So for our first assassin here, with our AD assassin, which is physical damage, we're gonna pick Talon. He's a very easy to learn assassin. So next up we'll go to our AP assassin. We're gonna hand it over to Fizz. Fizz is a really easy AP assassin to play. I think he's probably like one of the only easy AP assassins to play. I feel like LeBlanc is a little too hard for a lot of people. Echo, his ult's kind of confusing to noobs, so I think your best bet is to go with Fizz in this one. And the last up on the plate, we have our burst mages. I'm going to say Veigar is probably the easiest burst mage for you to play. I don't know, his kit's just really simple, it's really hard to mess up, and I think he's the easiest of all the burst mages. And as I said before, there's a lot of weird things in the mid lane. So there's going to be a lot of different categories that's coming into the mid lane. Like some people call certain people battle mages, like Vladimir, Victor. But in reality, they're all under it's just under an easy category to make it easier for your guys. Those 3 ones that you should be really focusing on. And most of these guys who are part of the battle mage part of that, or like artillery mages. Some actually require a lot of skill for like skill shots and aiming, where others require heavy mechanics like Vladimir, where you're gonna need to learn how to farm really efficiently, or else you will 100% lose every game if you don't know how to farm with him and play position amazingly. So yeah, why I'm not putting those guys in is because a lot of them are just not very beginner friendly, and it's just going to be too confusing for you, so it's simple to just keep it to champion like this. And now to go to the role of what mid laners do. As you can see, there's so many different categories for mid lane. Everyone is so unique. There's so many things you can do with it. But mid laners come down to a boiling point is that you are the center of the map and you need to control the center of the map because the center map is the most valuable point in the game. So you need to roam efficiently, and say if you're playing, for example, Talon, your job is to assassinate, right? Cool, you're assassinate. Like, oh, who do you assassinate? Well, obviously not the big tank, right? Your job is to target somebody like the ADC, support, maybe your own mid laner. Maybe he's a squishy. Maybe he's playing a mage, so then you target him. Your job in team fight is to take out those squishies. Now, the same goes for AP assassin. You do the same thing, except you're just AP damage. A burst mage, you, believe it or not, can also target tanks, but you can target squishes too. It just matters the situation. So really, mid lane comes down to a lot of cool things. I recommend people play mid lane to learn so much. I don't think it's the hardest lane, but I do think it's the most to learn because there's so many different things that happen in mid lane. And generally, your job in mid lane is to make sure you secure objectives with your jungler. You should try to roam as much as possible with your jungler and try to help him secure his objectives, whether he's going top or bottom for Dragon or Herald. I'll explain what those are later, but you need to make sure you roam with your team because this is a team game, not a single player game. So up next we have jungle. In the jungle role, there's a large amount of things you can do. You can play really any champion in the jungle, except Yuumi, because Yuumi's a piece of trash. If you play that champion, you know, you shouldn't be living. But besides that, jungle is a very large amount of champions that you can select from, and it's really kind of enjoyable sometimes. Other times it's not. Your job is to simply roam for objectives on the map. Now, the jungle role is going to be a really complicated role to explain here, so I'm going to take my time and try to help you the best I can. Now, when you're playing jungle, there is what you call buffs, and it's going to be called red or blue buff. Red buff gives you burn damage on an enemy and also gives you regen for HP, where blue buff gives you cooldown reduction for your abilities, so your abilities come off cooldown faster, so you can use them more, and AP regen, so you regen your magic. And the objectives in the game that you're going to be roaming for are going to be called Dragon, um, Rift Herald, and Baron. Baron will spawn past, I believe it's the 15-minute mark or 20-minute mark, where the rest of the time it will just be Rift Herald. Rift Herald is a little cool like monster called Shelly. You drop it into a lane and it kind of like bulldozes into towers and just blows them the fuck up, and they're really cool. So this is probably the only role I don't recommend new players play. Jungle is a little too complicated. I feel like you need to get a better understanding of the game before you jump into jungle, and then once you understand the game, jungle is a way more, you know, playable for you if you're newer, once you've, you know, got better at champions. But then again, if you want to try it, dive right into it, go ahead. I will recommend you one champion. No, I'll say two. We're gonna go with probably Zac or Rammus. These both are tanks, but they are very good junglers. And if you don't want to play a tank at all, I mean, the only other option I would really give you is Nocturne. He is an assassin. Also, you have to have this item called Smite. It is a summoner spell you take. And I'm going to get into summoner spells and runes later when we start to actually select champions and I show you other things. And always, I can make videos on specific roles more in depth for you guys. If you ever want to, just drop a comment in the section below and I can easily drop a specific video just for a role and go advanced into details on it. Up next, though, is we got ADC. Now, ADC stands for Attack Damage Carry. Your whole purpose is, as it says, attack damage carry. You will be doing the most damage on the team. There was a joke a couple of seasons ago, which was very true, that ADC was a useless role and they didn't do damage at all, which was very true. Now, ADC is a complicated role with the fact that your job is you're going to be needing to carry the team. That's really one of the biggest things that ADCs can do. Your purpose in the team is to get CS, which is last hits. And I'll try to go more in depth in that later about what last hits are, because it's going to be a long process. It's just basically killing minions. And almost every single ADC is a range champion. That's just how it has to be attack damage carry. There's not a single melee champion that is attack damage carry. Some make excuse for Yasuo, but he's not a true one. As always, I'm going to give you guys 3 champions to pick for a specific role like this. We're going to go with Ezreal, Ashe, and Sivir. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it sounds about right. Just a really quick summary for ADC. Your job is to have really good positioning in team fights, to get a lot of CS and last hits, and to do a lot of damage. That is your job as ADC. And finally, last but not least, we're going to be going to support. Some people call it the easiest role in the game. It really matters. I think it's pretty easy, but it definitely has its weaknesses. So as support entails, it's pretty like self-explanatory. Your job is to support the team the best way you can. Your job is going to be providing vision, assisting the ADC all the time, well, basically gluing yourself to the ADC, and helping the team in any way possible. You have to be really adaptable. Now, there is a ton of supports that do all different things, but the main categories that I suggest you guys play is enchanters, engage supports, and then if you really want, you can play artillery support. So I'm just going to go over all 3 of those really quickly. First up is enchanters. Basically, as an enchanter, you're going to buff your team. There's champions in this game that specifically buff and help out all the time with that stuff, and I'll drop one real quick. Who you're going to want to pick most likely is Nami. She's a great support. She increases your ADC's attack damage with one of her abilities. She has great CC, and she honestly is just well-rounded in general. And you're going to hear this a lot. You're going to hear this thing called CC. It just means crowd control, which in terminology is stun condition most of the time. Not necessarily, but stunning a creature, so a person. So an enemy champion, I'll just make it easier. So certain abilities, you literally just stun them, like Nami, she has got a bubble. You hit it on the person, they get kind of like put up in the air, and they're kind of sitting there airborne for about like a second or two, as anyone can shoot them, and they can't do anything back. Up next, we're going to go with a engage support. This is the easiest one to pick. I think one of the literally hands down best engage support in the game is Nautilus. This guy's an absolute unit. He's also a tank. If he hits you with his hook, your life in the early game is almost considered over. That is a death sentence. So just a quick overlay of engage supports. Again, most of these are pretty self-explanatory. You're going to engage. You're going to go before your ADC and you're going to go in on somebody. Now, I recommend that you usually target the enemy ADC and squishies. You need to not target tanks. That's the last thing you want to do. And last but not least, to finish it all off, we have artillery supports. They're not as common, but you do see them here and there. They're good for certain ADCs and they work along with good champions. The most common one you'll see is most likely Vel'Koz, and most likely Xerath you'll see. I'm pretty sure those are really the only 2 you should see in bot lane in general. They're the only 2 viable artillery mages. And both of their jobs are very similar, because they're both artillery mages. All you're going to be doing is sitting very far back and shooting skill shots in and trying to cause damage. You never want to get really close, because it's a very dangerous territory for you, because you're artillery, you're not close range. It can be beneficial sometimes, but keep at range at best. And this is a reminder. So playing support in general means you still have to do all these things to support your team, but these are just different categories of ways that supports play and different kind of supports that there are. You still have to get wards for your team. You still don't take last hits. It's very simple. There's a very simple rule for playing supports, is you do not hit the minions. Do your best not to hit minions in the minion wave, and don't take last hits. So don't kill the minions when they're low HP when your ADC is around. When he's not around, it's okay for you to do that. So that is everything for now. In this video, I'm just covering very basics on basically what kind of champion you want to select, what role you want to play, and how all the rules work to kind of give you a better understanding of the game. The next video, I will definitely have to explain everything else. So when you pick a champion, you're going to have to pick your summoner spells, your ruins, and a bunch of other things. And we're going to have an in-depth conversation about last hitting and wave management. Not a lot of players even do this in high elo. Like, I'm only in Emerald 4. I just recently hit it. Only been doing it for a little bit. We got it within this season. The first season of Emerald went from Gold 4 to Emerald. It's pretty easy. So take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. I think I have enough credibility to tell you some of the stuff I have to present. But I will see you guys in the next video. Leave a comment if you want anything specifically done. Like if you want to know something about a certain champion and you're like, oh man, like I really want to learn how to play this champion. And I will do my best to help you. Other than that, guys, I will see you all in the next video. Have a good one, boys.